My name's Eric. I'm one of the ministers here. I'm part of the teaching team, and I'm excited about today. Today is a good day. Everybody got an extra hour of sleep, right? That's always a good thing. But also today, right after service, we have something called Pizza, Parfaits, and Pals. I think Parfaits, Pals, and Pizza. That's what it is. Parfaits, Pals, and Pizzas. And one of the things that when I started coming to this church, when my family started coming to this church, one of the things that we really liked about Bridgetown was just the children's ministry here is amazing. It's amazing. Nick Parker, who's our children's minister, he spoke last week. If you missed it, you can go and see him giving us a sermon in a ghost costume. It's lots of fun on the website. But he put together this event to help kids kind of extend a hand of hospitality to their friends, to invite their friends to church, to kind of confront the truth of who Jesus is, and then have some fun and eat some pizza and eat ice cream and hang out with pals. But this isn't just an event for kids. If you like parfaits or pizza or even pals, you can head down to the fellowship hall right after church and enjoy that event with us. We wouldn't be able to do events like this if it wasn't for the faithful and generous giving of our partners here at Bridgetown. You can give online through the website or on the app. You can give in the drop boxes in the back. But however you give and whenever you give, we just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for giving, because if it wasn't for your giving, we wouldn't be able to do the kinds of things that we can do in ministry here at the church. If you're new here, if maybe your kid was invited to join in on Parfaits, Pals, and Pizza, we don't expect you to give today. But we would love to connect with you. And we would love to kind of get to know your story, give you a chance to kind of hear our story, where we come from. And the best way to kind of get that ball rolling is to fill out one of the Connect cards in the seat backs in front of you. Just fill it out. Take it to the Gateway Cafe where the coffee was just a minute ago, and you can hand it to somebody there. They'll give you a gift card just to thank you for doing that, because we would really, really love to kind of get to know you, to connect with you in that way. We're in the middle of a series all about the book of Mark. So if you haven't gotten one of these Bible journals, they're in the back by the doors where you came in. So you can grab one. It's yours to keep it forever as a memento of this moment right here, where you got an extra hour of sleep and then you got to eat some ice cream and pizza, right? So grab one of those. But we're in chapter 7, which is in the middle of a big section in the book of Mark that's all about food. Like it's in between Jesus feeding 5,000 people and Jesus feeding 4,000 people, right? And the two stories that we're talking about today, they both take place, or they both talk about eating food around a table. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. In your Bible journals, go ahead and turn to Mark chapter 7. And on the blank side of the paper, we're going to draw a picture together. But everybody's picture is going to look different today. So that's exciting. That's exciting. So here's what I want you to do, okay? I want you to draw your dining room table, or wherever you normally eat dinner together as a family. So if it's your dining room table, your kitchen table, maybe it's TV trays situated around the TV, whatever it is, I want you to draw where you eat dinner, okay? And then on that, we're kind of making a map of how your normal eating situation happens. On that, I want you to draw a circle wherever you usually sit. Wherever you usually sit on your map there, draw a circle. If there's any other adults at the table, go ahead and represent them with a triangle, okay? And then if there's any kids at the table, go ahead and represent them with a square, all right? This picture that you just drew represents something really important. When you sit around the table together as a family, what you're saying to one another is, we all are a part of this thing we call our family. Everybody around this table gets to participate in the blessings of being a part of this family, right? And that's what food represents in the book of Mark, is it's this extension of God's kingdom's blessings being poured out for people all over the place. And so the question is, who gets a seat at the table? Who gets to sit down at the table and enjoy the blessings of God's kingdom? And Jesus walks around and he's doing all of this stuff where he's extending a hand of hospitality to people. And so I was thinking about food and hospitality. And I was like wondering, what exactly does it mean to be hospitable? Because it's not just about inviting people to dinner, right? Because hospitality can be something that happens in a conversation. It doesn't have to necessarily include food. And so I was looking around. I found this definition by a guy named Henry Nouwen. He's a Catholic author. He's got lots of books out there. But I'm going to read you his definition of hospitality. And as I do, I just want you to think about how it makes you feel. How it makes you feel when you hear this. Okay, so this is what he says. Hospitality wants to offer friendship without binding the guest and freedom without leaving him alone. Hospitality, therefore, means primarily the creation of a free space where the stranger can enter and become a friend instead of an enemy. Hospitality is not to change people, but to offer them a space where change can take place. It's not to bring men and women over to our side, but to offer freedom, not disturbed by dividing lines. It is not to lead our neighbor into a corner where there are no alternatives left, but to open a wide spectrum of options for choice and commitment. It is not an educated intimidation with good books, good stories, and good works, but the liberation of fearful hearts so that words can find roots and bear ample fruit. It's not a method of making our God and our way into the criteria of happiness, but opening an opportunity to others to find their God and their way. And what he's saying here isn't some like relativism. He's saying, I think about God in a certain way, and other people think about God in a certain way. Our way of thinking about God is not God. Hopefully it's based on God, but it's not. And so he's saying everybody has to approach God in their own way. The paradox of hospitality is that it wants to create emptiness, not a fearful emptiness, but a friendly emptiness, where strangers can enter and discover themselves as created free. Free to sing their own songs, speak their own languages, dance their own dances, free also to leave and follow their own vocations. Hospitality is not a subtle invitation to adopt the lifestyle of the host, but the gift of a chance for the guest to find his own. When I read that, as a guest, as a participant in somebody else's hospitality, I think it sounds really nice. But as a host, it makes me really nervous. It kind of bothers me to think about offering people a space where they don't have to agree with everything that I think. To offer a space where people don't have to do all of the kinds of things that I do. Kind of makes me nervous. And as I was thinking about why does that make me nervous, I kind of came to the conclusion that it's this. I am a weird mixture of pride and insecurity. Pride and insecurity. And you'd think those things would counteract one another. But if we think about it, the truth is that they're closer to one another than we might think. They just kind of operate a little bit differently, especially when we offer a space of false hospitality that's based on our pride and our insecurity. If pride is outweighing our insecurity at the moment, and somebody else comes into our space and they think differently than we do, and they act differently than we do, and it kind of rubs us the wrong way, when our pride is in charge, We tend to value being right over being in that relationship. And so it leads to rejection of that person. We kind of exile them out of our space of false hospitality. But if our insecurity has taken over, then we tend to value being in relationship over being right or right with the truth, right? And so whatever they do, whatever they think, we just kind of adopt it as our own. We become an imitation of ourselves, right? We just kind of do the things that they want us to do, and we kind of just assent to whatever they think and whatever they believe. And so what bothers me about this quote is that it doesn't leave room for pride or insecurity. And so often I'm controlled by those things that I don't think that I can do it right. And that's true, I think, of all of us. I'm not alone. Like the first story in our chapter today, chapter 7, is about Jesus sitting down with his disciples and eating food together. And the Pharisees and the Jewish scribes, they come to Jesus and they said, "You didn't wash your hands. What are you doing? You can't eat without washing your hands." And Jesus calls them a hypocrite. So students, the next time you're sitting down at dinner and and they say, "Hey, have you washed your hands?" You know, you can quote Jesus, "It's not what goes into the man that defiles him," right? No, but I'm just joking. Don't do that. You'll get in a lot of trouble. I don't want you to do that, okay? And the point of this passage, what Jesus points out, is that the Pharisees are insecure, right? They built all of these laws on top of God's law, all of these things that they can do to keep them clean. But in the Bible, uncleanness is not sinful. It's not sin to be unclean. It's just a part of being a human. Like, there's lots of things that make you unclean, and all of them have to do with just being a human that lives their lives, right? And so being unclean isn't the same thing as sinfulness, but what they're doing is they're trying to make themselves clean all of the time, and they're neglecting God's law. They're neglecting the things that God tells them to do. And so they end up, what Jesus tells them is, because you're following all of your rules, all of your regulations, you have ended up not honoring your father and mother. So when your parents tell you to wash your hands at dinner, you need to honor your father and mother and do it, right? Because the Pharisees weren't worried about germs. That's what your parents are worried about. They don't want you to get sick. So listen to your parents, right? But it's the Pharisees and the Jewish scribes' pride and insecurity that causes them, when Jesus comes into their space and doesn't think like they do and doesn't do the things that they do, it causes them to reject Jesus. But there's another story in chapter 7, and it's about this woman who is a thoroughly Gentile woman. Like, she's not Jewish at all. And Mark makes this very clear by saying twice that she's not Jewish. He says she's a Gentile and she's a Syrophoenician woman, right? Those both mean that she's not Jewish, okay? And that's really important for the story, okay? So she hears about Jesus walking around, and she's got a daughter that has a demon inside of her. And this woman is hopeless. She feels helpless. She doesn't know what to do. But somehow she hears about this rabbi that's going around that can exorcise demons and in a way that nobody else can. And so she runs to find him. She finds him in this house. And she falls down in front of him and she looks up to him and she says, "Rabbi, help my daughter." She sees that Jesus holds the solution to her problem. And then this is what happens after she does that. It's in chapter 7, verse 27. Jesus told her, "First I should feed the children, my own family, the Jews. It isn't right to take food from the children and throw it to the dogs." And she replied, "That's true, Lord, but even the dogs under the table are allowed to eat the scraps from the children's plates." "Good answer," he said. Now go home, for the demon has left your daughter." And when she arrived home, she found her little girl lying quietly in bed, and the demon was gone. So Jesus, this woman is desperate. She's hopeless. She's helpless. She's fallen at Jesus' feet. She's asked for his help, and he calls her a dog. And I think that when we read that, we're like, this doesn't make any sense. Isn't Jesus supposed to be nice? Is Jesus being mean here by calling her a dog? Well, no. He's not being mean. He's being honest. He's being truthful. She falls in front of Jesus, and what we expect Jesus to do is just to kind of absorb whatever she's laying on the table and just heal her daughter, right? We expect him to be nice, but Jesus isn't being nice here. But he's also not being mean. He's just telling the truth. He has a specific mission. And that specific mission means that he has to go to the Jews first. Because there's lots of reasons for this, but one of the reasons is because he needs to show that he is the true Israel, that he can do what Israel couldn't do, and he also needs to show that they're going to indict themselves by rejecting him. But so he's not being mean, but we want him to be nice. And so what a lot of scholars do a lot of times is they take this conversation and they say, well, maybe Jesus was just saying this with like a twinkle in his eye. He's like, I'm gonna, you're one of the dogs, and so she gives a clever reply. And it's kind of like a witty banter, like a clever repartee. Like they're trying to take this scene and transport it into Downton Abbey, and like two like wealthy landowners having a clever conversation with one another. But to do that completely dismisses this woman's desperation, her helplessness, her hopelessness. And so that's not what's happening here either. Jesus, when he steps into people's spaces, he confronts them with the truth of who he is. This woman comes and she confronts Jesus with the truth of her situation, and he confronts her right back with the truth of his situation. But what's remarkable about this story, of all of the stories in the book of Mark, or nearly all of the stories in the book of Mark, is that this woman who's not Jewish, who is thoroughly Gentile, who has no reason to know who Jesus is, she gives the right answer. She gives the right answer. She confronts Jesus with her truth. Jesus confronts her with the truth of his situation. And then what she says is, "You're right. I am a dog. I'm not one of the children. I don't deserve what you have to offer. I don't deserve a place at the table." And so she receives what Jesus says to her, but then she confronts Jesus with the truth of who he is. And I don't know how she knows who Jesus is. I don't know how she knows that Jesus is a guy that gives out lots of grace, but somehow she knows that he's the kind of person that would still give the scraps to the dogs. And so she receives from Jesus the truth that he offers her, and then she confronts him securely in the knowledge of the truth of who Jesus is, right? She doesn't deny the truth that Jesus offers. And so what happens is Jesus responds to her with her humility and her security in the truth. And he says, "Your daughter is healed." This woman who didn't deserve it, this woman who wasn't on the original plan, gets in on the plan. She gets an invitation to the table. Because when she confronts the truth of who Jesus is, she recognizes it as truth in humility, right? And she recognizes that Jesus offers grace. So what's happening in this story is that both Jesus and the woman are practicing true hospitality. They're practicing true hospitality where they're inviting each other into their spaces, confronting each other with the truth, being honest about what's going on, listening and receiving from the other person in humility. Henry Nouwen says that receptivity without confrontation leads to a bland neutrality that serves nobody. When our insecurity is taken over in that space of false hospitality, we just absorb whatever comes our way. But confrontation without receptivity leads to an oppressive aggression that hurts everybody. And so when our pride takes over in that false space of hospitality, we just reject people outright because they think or act or do things differently than we do. And so hospitality is about staying true and staying open. But how do we do that when we're so riddled with pride and insecurity? How can we get that to work? And I think the answer is this. We have to offer a space of true hospitality to Jesus. We have to confront Jesus with honesty. This is who I am. This is what I know. This is how I've behaved. This is what I'm dealing with. And we have to, in humility, hear what he has to say back to us. We have to receive his confrontation back to us. We have to rest in his truth. And when we do that, we can find security there. Because he says we are children of God. He says he loves us. He says he cares about us. He wants the best for us. And we also have to rest in his grace. Because we know that we don't measure up. Because we know we haven't done all of the right things and said all of the right things. And when we can offer a space of true hospitality to Jesus in our lives, we can start to offer a space of true hospitality to other people in our lives. Where we say, come on in. We'll receive you and we'll listen to you and we'll love you no matter who you are, no matter what you've done. And we need to stand there in confrontation and honesty and say, this is what I know. One of the things we say here all of the time is that with Jesus, better is possible. With Jesus, you have access to a better life, a better community, a better purpose. And I really believe that to be true. But I can't convince you of that. You've got to experience it. I've experienced it. A lot of people in this room have experienced it, but you've got to experience it. And the only way you can do that is by offering a space where Jesus can come and honestly share with you who he is. Where he can confront you with who you are. Undeserving, but invited to the table. A dog that gets to eat with the children, right? And so I can't convince you, but what we can do here in this place, in this family, is we can create a space of true hospitality for whoever walks into this group, walks into this community, where we can say, you are loved and you are cared for. But there's something more that you need, and that something more is Jesus. And if we create that space in security and humility, I believe that the Holy Spirit will move in this place like you've never seen before, where he'll change people's hearts, Not because of our special words or our great music or because of the children's ministry, but because the Holy Spirit wants people to encounter the true Jesus. And he's willing to work if we let him. So, the question is, well, how do we practice hospitality with Jesus if we don't even know how to practice hospitality with each other? It's kind of a catch-22, right? Like, we need to work on both of these things at the same time. And so go ahead and get out your pictures there again, where you've got your dining room table. Looks beautiful. And here's what I want you to do. Just draw a couple of X's. The question is, who are you going to invite to the table? Who are you going to open up a space of true hospitality to in your life? And I mean this figuratively, like who at your work or who, near your house or who in your friends or your family needs to know the truth of who Jesus is and needs to know how much he loves them. But I also mean it literally. Who are you going to invite to dinner? Who are you going to invite to your table to share in the blessings of your family so that at the very least they can experience a bit of what it's like to experience the blessings of the kingdom? Every week we practice hospitality by taking communion together. So if you haven't gotten one of these, they're in the back by the entrance. Go ahead and grab one. But what we do at communion is we remember what Jesus did for us on the cross, where he confronted us with the truth of our sin by taking the penalty for it, where he confronts us with his grace by dying on our behalf and giving us his reward. And so, as we eat and drink today, may we remember what Jesus did for us. May we practice true hospitality and receive his confrontation of truth. The bread represents his body that was broken for us. Let us eat and remember that he loves us. And the juice represents his blood that was poured out for us. Let us drink and remember that he has given us grace. But maybe you're sitting here today and you're thinking, I want to believe. I want to know what Jesus has to offer. I want to give him a space of true hospitality. But maybe you don't know how. Maybe you don't believe. Maybe at one time you did believe and somehow you lost faith. And you're just not sure how to get it back. I can't convince you that this is true. And maybe you can't convince yourself either. And so what I think in that case you need to do is confront Jesus with the truth of your situation and let him deal with it. Receive his grace in humility, but also remind him of the truth that he has offered us. And so as we sing this song, if that's you, if you're saying, I don't know if I believe, maybe you're just teetering on the edge of belief, I would just ask that you make this song your prayer. I need you to soften my heart and break me apart. I need you to open my eyes to see that you're shaping my life. All I am, I surrender. Give me faith to trust what you say, that you're good and your love is great. I'm broken inside, I give you my life. So I may be weak, but your spirit's strong in me, and my flesh may fail. My God, you never will. 'Cause I may be weak, but your spirit's strong in me, and my flesh may fail. My God, you never will. Give me faith to trust what you say, that you're good and your love is great. I'm broken inside, I give you my life. Give me faith to trust what you say, that you're good and your love is great. I'm broken inside, I give you my life. You can go ahead and stand up as we sing.